The crystal chandeliers of the Belmont Grand Hotel cast prismatic light across white marble floors, each gleaming surface reflecting the opulence that $300,000 could buy. White roses, exactly 2,247 of them, as the bride had counted, draped every surface, their petals chemically treated to maintain perfection through the 6-hour celebration ahead. The Saturday afternoon sun filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city's skyline, illuminating tables set with china so delicate it seemed to whisper wealth. Evelyn Carter moved through this landscape of excess with the practiced invisibility of someone who had spent 50 years serving people who rarely saw her. At 70 years old, her hands bore the permanent stiffness of arthritis. Her knees protested every step, but her posture remained dignified. The black uniform she wore, pressed that morning with steam from her ancient iron, had seen better decades. The fabric shined slightly at the elbows, and a careful eye might notice where she had mended a small tear near the collar. But it was clean, and it was hers, and she wore it with the quiet pride of someone who had earned every dollar in her modest bank account. She carried a silver tray of champagne flutes, each one filled precisely to the regulation line she had learned in 1974 at her first catering job. Her orthopedic shoes, purchased on sale 6 months ago, made no sound against the marble. She had walked 3 miles to the bus stop that morning because her 1998 Honda had finally surrendered to time, its transmission dying 2 weeks before this job. The $200 she would earn today would go toward her granddaughter Shanice's community college textbooks. Shanice was studying nursing, the first Carter to attend college. "Champagne, ma'am?" Evelyn offered the tray to a woman draped in lavender silk. The guest plucked a flute without acknowledgement, her eyes sliding past Evelyn as if she were part of the furniture. Evelyn had long ago stopped expecting eye contact. Invisibility was part of the uniform. The bride, Melissa Ashford, held court near the elevated head table, her $15,000 Vera Wang gown cascading around her like architectural foam. At 28, she possessed the particular beauty that came from generational wealth: perfect teeth, professionally maintained skin, hair that defied humidity through chemical intervention. Her father owned Ashford commercial properties. Her mother sat on 3 charity boards. Melissa herself worked in brand consultation, which seemed to involve posting photographs online and attending events exactly like this one. "No, no, no!" Melissa's voice cut through the string quartet's gentle interpretation of Pachelbel. "The gift table is 2 inches off center. 2 inches, this is my wedding." The wedding planner, a thin woman who had developed a stress-induced eye twitch over the past 6 months, rushed to adjust the table's position. Evelyn moved along the perimeter of the room, offering champagne, collecting empty glasses, existing in the margins. She had worked dozens of weddings like this. The details changed: venue, flowers, degree of bridezilla behavior, but the fundamental dynamics remained constant. There were people who served and people who were served. "You there?" A sharp voice. Evelyn turned to find Melissa staring at her, really looking at her for the first time. The bride's eyes traveled from Evelyn's face down to her uniform, her worn shoes, then back up with an expression that mingled disgust and fascination. "You're one of the servers?" "Yes, ma'am." Evelyn kept her voice neutral, professional. "How old is that uniform?" Melissa stepped closer, her designer heels clicking against marble. Several guests turned to observe the interaction, sensing entertainment. "I've kept it well maintained, ma'am. It's clean and—" "It's ancient." Melissa's voice rose to ensure her audience could hear. "Look at it. It's practically falling apart. The shine on the elbows, the visible mending. Do you understand what this wedding cost?" Evelyn felt heat rise in her chest, but she maintained her composure. "I apologize if my appearance is unsatisfactory, ma'am. This is a luxury event." "Luxury. And you look like you walked out of a homeless shelter." Melissa turned to the gathered guests with theatrical disbelief. "Can you believe this? I paid the catering company premium rates, and they send me someone who looks like this." The wedding planner appeared at Melissa's elbow, her face pale. "Miss Ashford, I'm sure we can—" "People like you," Melissa continued, speaking directly to Evelyn now, her voice dripping with condescension. "You lower the entire atmosphere. This is supposed to be the most important day of my life, and you're standing here in that sad, pathetic uniform, making my guests uncomfortable." Evelyn's fingers tightened around the silver tray. In 50 years of service work, she had endured countless indignities, invisible rudeness, casual dismissal, the thoughtless cruelty of people who considered servers as background elements. But this public humiliation, this deliberate degradation, felt different, more intentional, more cruel. "Ma'am, I've been working professionally for 50 years, Evelyn said quietly, her dignity intact even as her hands trembled slightly. "I take pride in my work. I came here to do a good job for you." 50 years? In the same uniform? Melissa's laugh was sharp, performing for her audience. Several guests chuckled. "That's not something to be proud of, sweetheart. That's just sad. Honestly, someone like you shouldn't even be allowed in a venue like this. You're bringing down the aesthetic." The string quartet had stopped playing. The entire ballroom, 200 guests dressed in their finest, the wedding party in their coordinated silk and wool, the other servers frozen in their duties, watched this collision between worlds. Some faces showed discomfort. Others showed the particular pleasure people took in witnessing someone else's humiliation, grateful it wasn't them. Evelyn stood very still, the champagne flutes on her tray catching the light from the crystal chandeliers. Her worn shoes, her mended uniform, her 70-year-old dignity, all of it suddenly, painfully visible. She thought of Shanice's textbooks. She thought of the 3-mile walk to the bus stop. She thought of 50 years of work, of pride, of never asking for anything she hadn't earned. "Please leave," Melissa said, her voice cold now, final. "You're fired. Get out of my wedding." The ballroom doors at the far end of the space opened at precisely that moment. A man entered, his presence somehow altering the atmosphere before anyone consciously registered his arrival. He wore a black suit tailored with the precision that only Italian craftsmanship and serious money could achieve. His dark hair was styled back from his face, revealing sharp features and eyes that seemed to calculate the value of everything they observed. At 35, Dante Moretti moved with the controlled grace of someone accustomed to violence, but currently choosing restraint. Most notably, the tattoo that crept up the left side of his neck, partially visible above his crisp white collar. Intricate, unmistakably Mafia. He had come for business. The groom, Marcus Whitmore, was attempting to secure investors for a commercial real estate venture, and Dante laundered money through such ventures with practiced efficiency. But now, standing just inside the ballroom doors, Dante's eyes found the scene playing out in the center of the room. An elderly black woman in a worn uniform, holding a tray with shaking hands. A bride in white, sneering with casual cruelty. An audience, complicit in their silence. Dante's grandmother had worked as a hotel maid for 40 years. She had died at 72, her hands twisted with arthritis, her back permanently bent from decades of cleaning other people's luxury. She had raised Dante after his parents died, had worked double shifts to keep him fed, had never once complained about the people who looked through her as if she didn't exist. Dante Moretti began walking across the marble floor, his expensive shoes making soft, deliberate sounds in the silence. Every eye in the ballroom turned toward him, recognizing power when it entered the room, even if they didn't yet understand its nature. He stopped 3 feet from Melissa Ashford. "Did I just hear you correctly?" His voice was quiet, almost conversational, but it carried. Melissa turned toward the interruption, her expression cycling from annoyance to confusion to something resembling awareness as she registered the tattoo, the suit, the way this man occupied space like he owned it, which, in certain neighborhoods, he essentially did. "I'm sorry. Who are you?" She tried to reclaim her authority, but her voice had lost its sharp edge. Dante didn't answer her question. Instead, he looked at Evelyn, really looked at her, seeing what the other guests had refused to see. He saw the mended uniform worn with dignity. He saw hands that had worked for decades. He saw his grandmother's face superimposed over this stranger's, saw every hotel maid and janitor and service worker who had ever been treated as less than human by people who confused wealth with worth. "Ma'am," he said to Evelyn, his voice gentle in a way that seemed incongruous with everything else about him. "Are you all right?" The kindness in his tone nearly broke something in Evelyn that the cruelty hadn't touched. She blinked rapidly, maintaining her composure. "Yes, sir. I was just leaving." "No." Dante's attention returned to Melissa, and his voice shed its gentleness, like a weapon being unsheathed. "You're not going anywhere. She is." "Excuse me?" Melissa laughed, but it sounded uncertain. "This is my wedding. You can be quiet now." Dante spoke with the calm finality of someone who had ended arguments with more permanent methods. "I want to make sure I understand what happened here. This woman," he gestured toward Evelyn, "came to work your wedding, to serve you and your guests. And you humiliated her publicly because her uniform isn't new enough for your standards?" Marcus Whitmore, the groom, appeared beside Melissa, his face pale. He recognized Dante Moretti. Everyone in commercial real estate knew the Moretti family, knew the empire they had built through legitimate businesses that barely concealed their criminal foundations. Marcus had spent 3 months arranging today's meeting, had planned to pitch his development project over cocktails, had dreamed of the capital Dante could provide. "Mr. Moretti," Marcus began, his voice tight, "I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding. Did you hear what your wife said to this woman?" Dante's eyes remained fixed on Melissa. "Fiancée," Melissa corrected automatically, then seemed to realize that was perhaps not the most important detail at this moment. "Did you hear?" Dante repeated, his voice dropping lower, more dangerous. "What she said?" Marcus glanced at Evelyn, then at his bride, calculating rapidly. "Melissa has very high standards for our wedding. She's been under a lot of stress. So, when you're stressed, you abuse service workers." Dante tilted his head slightly, studying Marcus with the focused attention a predator might give prey. "That's your defense?" The ballroom had become a tableau. 200 guests frozen in their designer clothes, champagne flutes suspended halfway to lips, conversations died mid-sentence. The wedding photographer lowered her camera. The string quartet waited with bows hovering over strings. Even the white roses seemed to lean toward the scene, drawn to the drama unfolding in their expensive midst. Melissa found her voice, tried to reassert control. "Look, I don't know who you think you are, but this is a private event, and I have every right to maintain certain standards." "Standards." Dante's laugh was soft and utterly humorless. "You want to talk about standards? Let me tell you about my grandmother, Rosa Moretti. She worked as a hotel maid for 40 years. She cleaned rooms in places like this, probably even this hotel. She scrubbed toilets for people like you, people who never learned her name, never saw her face, never considered that she had a life outside of serving them." He took a step closer to Melissa, who instinctively moved back. "She raised me after my parents died, worked double shifts, triple sometimes. Her hands—" He held up his own hands, manicured and unmarked. Her hands were destroyed by chemicals and work. Her back was bent. Her knees gave out when she was 68, but she kept working because people like her don't get to retire when their bodies break. They work until they die. Evelyn stood very still, the champagne tray forgotten in her hands, watching this stranger defend her with an intensity that seemed to encompass every indignity she had ever endured. "She died at 72. Dante continued, his voice harder now, edged with old grief and fresh anger. "She died poor. She died tired. But she never died without dignity. She had more dignity in her broken hands than you have in your entire overpriced wedding." "I didn't mean," Melissa started. "You did mean it. That's the problem." Dante turned to address the entire ballroom now, projecting his voice so every guest could hear. "You all heard her. Someone like you. People like you. You heard her fire this woman for the crime of being poor, of being old, of having a uniform that showed the years she spent working." Several guests had the grace to look ashamed. Others stared at their shoes. A few whispered to each other, already calculating how this story would play in their social circles. Dante pulled out his phone, a gesture so casual it took a moment for its significance to register. "Marcus, you wanted to pitch me your development project today, the luxury condos on Riverside, the mixed-use complex downtown." Marcus nodded, hope flickering in his eyes despite the circumstances. "That's not happening." Dante's thumb moved across his phone screen. "I'm calling the owner of this hotel right now, Antonio Genovese, good friend of mine. I'm going to buy this wedding." "Buy it?" Melissa's voice climbed an octave. "You can't buy a wedding." "I can buy anything." Dante pressed the phone to his ear, his eyes never leaving Melissa's face. "Antonio, it's Dante. I need you to cancel a wedding at the Belmont, right now. Yes, the Ashford Whitmore wedding. I'll cover all costs plus 20%. Consider it a personal favor." "You can't do this." Melissa's composure shattered completely. "This wedding cost $300,000, 6 months of planning. My dress is custom Vera Wang." "Your dress," Dante said, lowering his phone, "cost more than this woman probably earns in 3 years, and you treated her like garbage." Marcus grabbed Melissa's arm, his face now showing panic rather than calculation. "Melissa, stop talking." "No, this is insane. You can't just cancel someone's wedding because of some old—" "Finish that sentence," Dante interrupted, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than shouting. "And I will make very sure that every venue in this city knows what you said here today. Every caterer, every vendor. Your name will be poison." He turned to Evelyn, and his expression softened again, the dangerous edge sheathing itself. "Ma'am, I'm sorry you had to experience this. No one should be treated the way she treated you." Evelyn found her voice, though it came out smaller than she intended. "Sir, you don't need to." "Yes, I do." Dante reached into his jacket, pulled out his wallet, and extracted $500 bills. He held them out to Evelyn. "For your time today, and for the disrespect you endured." Evelyn looked at the money. Then at his face, searching for the trap, the angle, the cruelty that often hid behind apparent kindness. But she saw only sincerity and something that looked like her own grandmother reflected in a stranger's eyes. "I can't accept this, sir. It's too much." "It's not enough." Dante pressed the bills into her hand, closing her arthritic fingers around them gently. "But it's what I have on me right now." Behind them, Melissa had begun crying, her perfect makeup running in chemical streams down her face. Marcus was on his phone, frantically calling someone, his father, perhaps, or a lawyer. Guests had begun to murmur, pulling out their own phones, already composing the texts and posts that would turn this moment into digital legend. The hotel manager appeared, nervous and apologetic, confirming that yes, Mr. Genovese had called. Yes, the wedding was canceled. Yes, all guests needed to depart within the hour. Dante offered Evelyn his arm, a gesture of old-world courtesy that seemed strange coming from a man with a neck tattoo and a reputation for violence. "Let me walk you out. My car is outside. I'll have my driver take you home." "Sir, I can take the bus." "No," he said simply. "Not today. Today, someone sees you. Today, someone makes sure you get home safely." As they walked toward the ballroom exit, Evelyn carrying her tray and her dignity and $500 she hadn't expected, the wedding guests parted before them like water before a ship's prow. The crystal chandeliers continued casting their prismatic light. The white roses continued their chemical perfection. But something fundamental had shifted in the room's expensive air. Behind them, Melissa Ashford collapsed into a chair, her dream wedding dissolving around her like sugar in rain, learning too late that cruelty always carries a price, and sometimes that price comes due in the most unexpected ways. The black Mercedes S-Class waited at the hotel's circular driveway, its paint job so perfect it seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The driver, a broad-shouldered man in his 40s with the alert posture of someone who had seen combat, opened the rear door before Dante and Evelyn reached the car. "Tommy, this is Miss—" Dante paused, realizing he didn't know her name. "Evelyn Carter, sir." She stood beside the luxury vehicle, acutely aware of her worn uniform, her orthopedic shoes, the champagne tray still somehow clutched in her hands. "Miss Carter will be riding with us. Take her wherever she needs to go." Dante gestured to the open door. "Please." Evelyn hesitated. In 70 years of life, she had developed finely tuned instincts for danger, for situations that seemed too good to be true. Men like Dante Moretti, powerful, dangerous men, didn't help women like her without wanting something in return. The tattoo on his neck told stories she had learned to avoid. The expensive suit, the armed driver, the casual way he had spent what she earned in months just to prove a point. All of it suggested a world she had no business entering. "Sir, I appreciate what you did back there, but I can manage." "I know you can manage." Dante's voice held no impatience, only a gentleness that seemed at odds with everything else about him. "My grandmother managed for 40 years. Managing isn't the same as being cared for. Please, just let me drive you home." Something in his voice, in the way he mentioned his grandmother, made Evelyn's resistance soften. She carefully set the champagne tray on the hotel's marble steps and allowed Tommy to help her into the car. The interior smelled of leather and something expensive she couldn't identify. The seats were heated, the kind of detail she had only read about in magazines. Dante slid in beside her, maintaining a respectful distance, and Tommy closed the door with the solid thunk that only German engineering could achieve. "Where are we going, Miss Carter?" Tommy asked from the driver's seat. Evelyn gave him her address, a small apartment in the Riverside district, 40 minutes away in traffic. Tommy nodded and pulled smoothly into the street. Silence filled the car for several blocks. Evelyn watched the city pass through tinted windows, her hands folded in her lap, the $500 bill still clutched in her palm. Dante looked at his phone, responding to messages with rapid thumb movements, his face unreadable. Finally, Evelyn spoke. "You didn't have to do what you did." "Yes, I did." Dante put his phone away, giving her his full attention. "My grandmother, Rosa, I told you about her. What I didn't tell you is that she died in a hotel room she was cleaning. Heart attack. She was alone. The guests complained about the delay in getting their fresh towels." Evelyn closed her eyes briefly. She knew women like Rosa, had worked alongside dozens of them over the years, had attended their funerals, had watched them work through pain and exhaustion, because stopping meant losing everything. "She raised you?" Evelyn asked. "After my parents died. Car accident. I was 7. Dante's voice carried the flatness of old grief, pain that had calcified into permanent scar tissue. "She worked at the Excelsior Hotel downtown, doubled her shifts after she took me in. I remember her coming home at midnight, her hands raw from chemicals, and she'd still make me dinner, still check my homework. She sounds like she loved you very much." "She did." Dante looked out the window at the city his family controlled through violence and commerce. "When I was 16, I started working for my uncle, the family business. Rosa knew what that meant. She begged me not to, said she didn't clean toilets for 40 years so I could become a criminal." "But you did anyway." "I did anyway." No defensiveness in his voice, just acknowledgement. "I told myself I was doing it for her, that I'd make enough money that she could retire, could stop destroying her body for people who didn't care if she lived or died. By the time I had that kind of money, her body was already destroyed, and she refused to take $1 from me. Said it was blood money." The car moved through afternoon traffic, past neighborhoods that shifted from wealthy to working class as they traveled away from downtown. Evelyn recognized the route. She had taken the bus along these streets thousands of times. "Was it?" she asked quietly. "Blood money?" Dante turned to look at her, and she saw something in his eyes that might have been respect. Most people were too afraid to ask him direct questions. "Some of it. Most of it, probably. I'm not a good man, Miss Carter. I've done things that would horrify you, but I've never once treated someone as less than human because they had less money than me. That's something, I suppose." "It's not much." Dante smiled slightly, an expression that didn't quite reach his eyes. "My grandmother died thinking I was a disappointment. The last thing she said to me was, 'You could have been anything.' She meant it as a condemnation. She was right. Evelyn studied this dangerous man beside her, seeing past the expensive suit and the neck tattoo to something wounded underneath. You defended me today. You threw away a business deal, canceled a wedding, made enemies of people who might have been useful to you, all for someone you don't know. Your grandmother would have been proud of that at least. Maybe. Dante pulled out his phone again, but didn't look at it, just held it like a talisman. Or maybe she would have said I was showing off, using my power to make myself feel better about all the times I didn't use it for good. Does it matter? I'm still grateful. Don't be grateful. His voice hardened slightly. What happened today shouldn't require gratitude. Basic human decency shouldn't be remarkable. The fact that it is, that tells you everything about the world we live in. They passed into Evelyn's neighborhood now, the buildings older, the streets narrower. Children played on sidewalks. Men sat on stoops. This was the world Evelyn knew, so different from the crystal chandeliers and white roses they'd left behind. That's my building, Evelyn said, pointing to a modest 4-story structure with fading brick and air conditioning units jutting from windows. The one with the blue door. Tommy pulled smoothly to the curb. Before Evelyn could reach for the door handle, Dante spoke again. Miss Carter, I need to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before you answer. Something in his tone made Evelyn's instincts sharpen. What is it? What you saw today, the way I handled that situation, it's not how these things usually go in my world. Usually there are consequences. People like Marcus Whitmore, the Ashford family, they have connections, lawyers, friends in positions that matter. They're going to be angry about what happened. Are you saying I'm in danger? Evelyn's heart rate increased, the brief fantasy of a kind stranger dissolving into something more complicated. I'm saying you might be. Not immediately, maybe never. But people talk. Words spread. And some people might decide to take their anger out on the person they see as the cause. Dante's eyes held hers. I embarrassed powerful people today. They might look for ways to restore their reputation. And the easiest target is always the person with the least protection. Evelyn felt the $500 in her hand suddenly feel heavier, like payment for something she hadn't agreed to purchase. What are you suggesting? That you let me help you. Really help you. Not just a car ride and some cash. Dante leaned forward slightly, his intensity focused entirely on her. I have a place, a safe house in the suburbs. Clean, secure, comfortable. You could stay there for a while. Few weeks, maybe a month. Just until this blows over. Until I'm sure no one is going to try to use you to get to me. I have a life, Mr. Moretti. A granddaughter. Responsibilities. I know, and I'm not suggesting you abandon them. Just let me keep you safe while I handle the fallout from today. Let me finish what I started when I walked into that ballroom. Evelyn looked at her building, at the blue door she had walked through every day for 12 years. She thought of Shanice and her textbooks. She thought of 50 years of taking care of herself, of never depending on anyone, of maintaining her dignity through sheer force of will. I need to think about it, she said finally. Dante nodded, as if he had expected this answer. He pulled out a business card, expensive stock, minimal design, and wrote a phone number on the back. This is my personal number. Not many people have it. If you change your mind, or if anything happens that makes you uncomfortable, call me, day or night. Evelyn took the card, studied the simple elegance of it. Why are you doing this? Really? Because Rosa Moretti died alone in a hotel room, and no one cared. Dante's voice carried the weight of years of guilt. Because I built an empire, but couldn't save the one person who mattered. Because sometimes you can't fix the past, but you can try to do better in the present. Tommy opened the door, and Evelyn stepped out into her neighborhood, back into her world. She turned to look at Dante one more time. Thank you, she said simply, for seeing me. Thank you, Dante replied, for reminding me why it matters. 3 days passed in the careful routine Evelyn had built over decades. She woke at 6, made coffee in the percolator her late husband had bought in 1987, checked on Shanice via text message. She took the bus to her other part-time job, cleaning offices downtown, work that paid less but demanded no interaction with wealthy clients who might recognize her face from whatever version of the wedding story had spread through their social circles. The $500 sat in an envelope in her nightstand drawer. She hadn't spent it yet, wasn't sure she would. It felt like accepting it made the whole surreal encounter real in a way she wasn't ready to process. On Thursday morning, Evelyn walked to the corner grocery store 4 blocks from her apartment. Mr. Kim had owned the store for 30 years, knew her by name, always saved the day-old bread that he sold at half price. She needed milk and eggs. Simple needs, normal life. She was reaching for a carton of eggs when she heard the voice. "Well, well, look who it is." Evelyn turned to find Marcus Whitmore standing at the end of the aisle, still wearing business attire but looking diminished somehow, his confidence replaced by something harder, more desperate. He wasn't alone. 2 men flanked him, younger, broader, wearing clothes that didn't quite fit right, the kind of men hired for their physical presence rather than their conversation skills. "Mr. Whitmore." Evelyn kept her voice neutral, but her heart rate accelerated. The grocery store suddenly felt smaller, the exits farther away. "You cost me everything, you know that?" Marcus stepped closer, and Evelyn instinctively moved back. $300,000, 6 months of planning. My fiancé won't even speak to me. And the deal with Moretti? Dead. Completely dead. He blacklisted me with half the commercial real estate investors in the city. "I didn't ask for any of that, sir." Evelyn's fingers tightened on the egg carton. "I was just trying to do my job." "Your job?" Marcus laughed bitterly. "Your job was to be invisible, to serve drinks and disappear. But instead, you had to go and get yourself rescued by a mob boss, had to turn my wedding into a viral social media disaster. Do you know how many videos are online? How many people watched me get humiliated?" One of the hired men cracked his knuckles. The sound echoed in the small store. Mr. Kim had disappeared into the back room, either not seeing the confrontation or choosing not to see it, survival instinct overriding civic duty. "Mr. Whitmore, I'm sorry about what happened to your wedding, but sorry doesn't fix this." Marcus's face flushed red. "You need to understand that actions have consequences, that people like you can't just embarrass people like me without what?" A new voice, sharp and unexpected. Dante Moretti appeared at the front of the store, Tommy 1 step behind him, and the atmosphere changed instantly. Marcus's hired muscle recognized dangerous men when they saw them, years of prison and street corners, teaching them to calculate odds in seconds. These were not favorable odds. "Mr. Moretti." Marcus's voice lost its aggressive edge, replaced by nervous calculation. "This is just a coincidence. I was shopping and—" "With 2 enforcers?" Dante's voice was conversational, almost friendly, which somehow made it more threatening. "In a grocery store 4 blocks from Miss Carter's apartment, 3 days after I warned you that she was under my protection? That's a very unfortunate coincidence, Marcus." "I wasn't going to hurt her. I just wanted to talk." "You just wanted to intimidate an elderly woman in a public place." Dante moved between Marcus and Evelyn with casual grace. "That's what men like you do when you lose. You punch down. You find someone weaker, and you make them pay for your failures." Tommy had positioned himself near Marcus's muscle, his stance relaxed but ready. The 2 hired men exchanged glances, clearly reevaluating their employment choices. "This is harassment," Marcus tried, grasping for some semblance of authority. "I have every right to shop where I want. And I have every right to ensure Miss Carter's safety." Dante pulled out his phone. "I'm curious. Does your father know you're here? Does he know you're threatening witnesses in public? Because I have his direct number. We could call him right now, ask him if this is how he raised his son." Marcus's face went pale. "There's no need to involve my father." "Then leave. Now. And if I hear you've been within 5 blocks of Miss Carter, if I hear you've so much as looked in her direction, I will involve your father, and your business partners, and every investor who might ever consider working with you." Dante's voice dropped lower. "I will make sure your name becomes poison in this city. Do you understand me?" Marcus nodded, his earlier aggression completely deflated. He gestured to his muscle. And the three men retreated toward the exit with as much dignity as they could salvage. After they left, silence filled the grocery store. Mr. Kim emerged cautiously from the back room. Evelyn realized she was still holding the egg carton, her hands shaking slightly. "How did you know?" she asked Dante. "I have people watching your neighborhood, just in case." He said it matter-of-factly, as if surveillance was as normal as breathing. "I told you there might be consequences." "You were right." Evelyn set down the egg carton carefully, aware that her hands weren't steady enough to hold it. "I should have listened." "It's not too late. The offer still stands. Safe house, security, time for this to blow over completely." Before Evelyn could answer, Tommy's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, his expression hardening. He stepped close to Dante, whispered something urgent. Dante's face went cold, professional. "When?" "20 minutes ago. They have her car. Last seen heading toward the docks." "Have who?" Evelyn felt dread settling in her stomach. "What's happening?" Dante turned to her, and she saw real concern in his eyes. "Do you have a granddaughter named Shanice? Drives a blue Honda Civic?" The world tilted. Evelyn grabbed the shelf for support. "Yes." "What about her? What about Shanice?" "The Ashford family has connections I didn't fully account for. Marcus's uncle runs security for several shipping companies. He has people—" Dante stopped, reconsidered his words. "Miss Carter, I need you to stay calm. We're going to fix this. But right now, your granddaughter has been taken." "Taken?" The word didn't make sense. Shanice was at community college. Shanice was studying nursing. Shanice was safe. "They're using her to get to you, to get to me, really. This is about leverage." Dante was already moving toward the door, Tommy on his phone coordinating something. "Come with me. Now. We don't have time to argue." "But Shanice—" Evelyn's voice broke. "I will get her back." Dante's voice carried absolute certainty. "I promise you, Miss Carter, I will bring your granddaughter home safe. But right now, I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" Evelyn thought of 50 years of independence, of never relying on anyone, of maintaining control through sheer determination. She thought of Shanice's smile, her dreams of becoming a nurse, her whole life ahead of her. "Yes," Evelyn said, "I trust you." "Then let's go." Dante took her arm gently but firmly, guiding her toward the exit. "Tommy, call everyone. I want every asset we have on this. And call Antonio. I need his eyes at the ports." As they rushed to the Mercedes, Evelyn sent a prayer to whatever God might be listening. "Let my baby be safe. Let this dangerous man be as good as his word. Let me have the chance to tell Shanice I love her one more time." The warehouse at Pier 47 loomed against the late afternoon sky, its corrugated metal walls streaked with rust and salt damage. 3 black SUVs surrounded the building, Dante's people positioned with military precision. Tommy handed Dante a tactical vest, which he shrugged on over his expensive suit with practiced efficiency. "Stay in the car," Dante instructed Evelyn. "No matter what you hear, stay here. Tommy will protect you." "That's my granddaughter in there." Evelyn's voice shook but held firm. "I won't sit here while she's—" "Miss Carter." Dante crouched beside the open car door, meeting her eyes. "I've done this before. Many times. If you come with me, I'll be protecting you instead of focusing on Shanice. Help me by staying safe. Please." Evelyn wanted to argue, wanted to storm that building herself, but she recognized the logic. She nodded, and Dante squeezed her hand once before moving toward the warehouse. He entered through a side door with 4 of his men, their movements coordinated and silent. The interior was dark except for harsh fluorescent lights in the center, where Shanice sat zip-tied to a metal chair. She was 20 years old, wearing her community college hoodie, her face tear-streaked but defiant. 3 men surrounded her, hired muscle, nervous and aggressive in the way of people who knew they'd made a terrible mistake but were too committed to back out. The man in charge, Marcus's uncle, Robert Ashford, stood apart, arms crossed, trying to project authority he didn't possess. He was 50-something, soft around the middle, wearing an expensive suit that couldn't hide his essential weakness. Moretti. Robert's voice cracked slightly. Glad you could make it. We can resolve this like civilized people. Civilized people don't kidnap college students. Dante's voice was ice. His men had positioned themselves strategically, cutting off all exits. Let her go, now. Not until you apologize to my niece. Not until you reverse the damage you did to my family's reputation. Dante laughed, a sound devoid of humor. Your family's reputation? Your niece publicly humiliated an elderly woman for being poor. I simply made sure there were consequences. That's not damage. That's justice. You canceled a wedding. You cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars. And you kidnapped an innocent girl. Dante took a step forward. Do you understand the mathematics here, Robert? You've graduated from social embarrassment to federal crimes, kidnapping across state lines. Interstate conspiracy. The FBI would be very interested in your security company's activities. Robert's face reddened. You think you can threaten me? I have connections, lawyers, friends in... You have nothing. Dante's voice cut through the bluster. You're a middle-aged man playing at being dangerous because your niece's wedding got ruined. You grabbed this girl thinking I'd back down, thinking you could intimidate me. You were wrong. He nodded once. His men moved with synchronized precision, disarming Robert's muscle in seconds. These were not gym-trained security guards. These were Dante's people, men who had survived real violence, who knew the difference between posturing and action. Dante walked directly to Shanice, pulling a knife from his vest. She flinched, but he simply cut her zip ties. You're safe now, he said softly. I've got you. Shanice rubbed her wrists, her brave facade crumbling. Where's my grandmother? Outside, waiting for you. Robert started toward the exit, but Tommy blocked his path. The police are on their way, Tommy said. Mr. Moretti called them 20 minutes ago, gave them everything. Surveillance footage, phone records, witness statements. You're done. You called the cops? Robert's voice climbed in disbelief. You're a criminal. You can't... I'm a businessman, Dante corrected, and sometimes the legal system actually works, especially when you give them gift-wrapped federal charges. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Dante guided Shanice toward the exit, his hand gentle on her shoulder. Come on. Your grandmother needs to see you're all right. Outside, Evelyn practically fell out of the Mercedes. Shanice ran to her, and they collided in an embrace that spoke of 50 years of family love, of sacrifices and dreams, of everything that mattered more than money or power or revenge. I'm okay, Grandma, Shanice whispered. I'm okay. Dante watched them, something soft crossing his features. Tommy appeared beside him. Police are 2 minutes out. We should go. In a moment. Dante approached the two women. Miss Carter, Shanice will need to give a statement to the police. Tell them everything. The truth. All of it. What about you? Evelyn asked, still holding her granddaughter. I was never here. Dante smiled slightly. Just a concerned citizen who happened to have information about a kidnapping. The police don't need to know more than that. He started toward his car, then paused. Miss Carter, that offer still stands. Safe house, protection, time for this to settle completely. But I'm guessing you'll refuse again. I'm guessing you'll keep watching anyway, Evelyn replied. I'm guessing you're right. Dante opened the car door. Stay safe, both of you. As the Mercedes pulled away and police cars flooded the pier, Evelyn held Shanice close and allowed herself, for the first time in days, to breathe. The community center on Riverside Avenue had been abandoned for 7 years before Dante Moretti bought it. Now, 18 months after a wedding that never happened, it stood renovated and thriving. A 3-story building with bright paint, new windows, and a sign that read Rose's Place Community Services in elegant letters. Evelyn Carter sat at her desk on the 2nd floor, reviewing applications for the job training program. At 72, she wore professional clothes she had purchased with her first real paycheck. Not a uniform, but slacks and a blouse that fit properly, comfortable shoes that didn't hurt her feet. Her title was Community Liaison Director, a position Dante had created specifically for her, though she had earned it through 18 months of dedicated work. Mrs. Carter? A young woman stood in the doorway, nervous. I'm here about the hospitality training program. Evelyn smiled, recognizing the worn clothes, the pride mixed with desperation, the familiar posture of someone who had spent years being invisible. Come in, sweetheart. Sit down. Tell me about yourself. This was her work now, connecting people who needed opportunities with training, resources, and most importantly, dignity. Rosa's place offered job training, legal assistance, childcare support, and a food pantry. It served the people hotels and hospitals and wealthy families used and discarded. It saw them. Dante funded it entirely, had sunk $2 million into the building and operations without blinking. But he rarely visited. This was Evelyn's domain, and he respected that boundary. Today, however, was different. Today was the 18-month anniversary of the center's opening, and Dante had asked if he could stop by. He arrived at 3 o'clock, still wearing expensive suits, still carrying the visible mark of his world on his neck. But something had shifted in him, a softness around his eyes, a ease in his posture that hadn't been there before. Miss Carter. He stood in her office doorway, much like that nervous young woman had hours earlier. Do you have a moment? For you? Always. Evelyn gestured to the chair across from her desk. Though you're paying for my time, so technically I'm obligated. Dante smiled, sitting down. How many people have we helped this month? 247 through direct services. Maybe double that through the food pantry and legal clinic. Evelyn pulled up the report on her computer. She had learned technology late in life, but had mastered it with characteristic determination. The hospitality training program has a 92% job placement rate. Most of our graduates are earning living wages with benefits. That's remarkable. Dante studied the numbers, genuine pride in his expression. Rosa would have loved this place. I think about her often, Evelyn admitted, about all the women like her who never got help, never got seen. This place, it's for them too. Retroactively, maybe, but still. You've built something important here. Dante leaned back in his chair. I provided money. You provided the soul. We both provided what we had to give. Evelyn closed her laptop. Now, I know you didn't come here just to review statistics. What's really going on? Dante was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. I've been thinking about what you said. That day in the car. You asked if the money was blood money, and I said most of it probably was. I remember. I've been trying to change that. Not completely. I'm realistic about what I am and what my family does. But I've been shifting things. More legitimate businesses, less violence, using my influence differently. He met her eyes. This center, what we've built here, it's shown me there's another way to have power. Power that doesn't come from fear. That's growth, Mr. Moretti. Evelyn's voice was gentle. Rosa would be proud of that, too. Dante, he corrected. After 18 months, I think we're past formalities. Dante. Evelyn tried the name, found it fit comfortably. Then you should call me Evelyn. A knock at the door interrupted them. Shanice entered, carrying a messenger bag covered in nursing program patches. She had graduated from community college and was now in her second year at the State University's nursing program. She worked part-time at Rosa's place, helping coordinate healthcare services. Grandma, Oh, Mr. Moretti, I didn't know you were here. Shanice's relationship with Dante was complicated. Gratitude mixed with wariness, understanding that he had saved her, but also that his world had endangered her in the first place. Shanice. Dante stood respectfully. How's the nursing program? Challenging. Good. She glanced at her grandmother. I just wanted to let you know I'm heading to class. The healthcare clinic has 3 new volunteers starting next week. Wonderful. Thank you, sweetheart. After Shanice left, Dante moved to the window, looking down at Riverside Avenue. The neighborhood hadn't transformed overnight. There was still poverty, still struggle. But Rosa's place had created visible change. People gathered outside, talking, connecting, finding resources. Do you remember what you said to me? Evelyn joined him at the window. That day, at the wedding, you said someone sees you. I remember. You taught me something that day. You taught me that being seen, really seen, can change everything, not just for the person being seen, but for the person doing the seeing. Evelyn touched his arm lightly. You saved me that day, but I think maybe I saved you a little bit too. Dante nodded slowly. His throat tight with emotion he rarely allowed himself to feel. Rosa died, thinking I was a disappointment, that I'd wasted the life she sacrificed for. But this... He gestured to the center, to the people below, to everything they'd built together. This is something she would have understood, something that mattered. Then we've both honored her, Evelyn said simply, and everyone like her. They stood together at the window, watching the afternoon light paint the street in gold. An elderly woman and a Mafia boss, both transformed by a moment of cruelty and a choice to respond with dignity instead of revenge. Both learning that power meant nothing if it wasn't used to see people, really see them, in their full humanity. Below, someone laughed, a child played, a person carrying Rosa's Place shopping bags walked with their head held high, carrying not just groceries but the dignity of being treated as worthy. Same time next month? Dante asked. Same time next month, Evelyn confirmed, and Dante, thank you for everything. No, he said softly. Thank you for reminding me what matters. He left the way he came, quietly, his expensive shoes making no sound on the new floors. Evelyn returned to her desk, to her applications, to her work of seeing people and helping them be seen. Outside, Riverside Avenue continued its daily rhythm, a little bit better, a little bit kinder than it had been 18 months before. And somewhere, maybe, Rosa Moretti smiled.